if you're going to buy a piece of equipment and you want to just have them on hand, which is what I do a lot of the time, is I'll just buy a box of filters. I'll go to Napa and I'll say, okay, this is what I have. I want to get a box, and they'll give you a bulk discount because you're going to buy a box, and you'll get most time 15 to 25% off to buy either 12 or 16 of them versus one. And then they sit in the shop. We make sure that they're in a sealed tote, and when I need one, I just go grab one. And then I'm much more apt to change it, you know, because it's not like, you know, for farming, like there's a lot of stuff on your mind, and you're like, oh yeah, I cleaned the air filter today, I gotta get a new one, I'll remember that. And then the next time comes around, you know, maybe four months later, and you're like, oh crap, I never changed the air filter. So if you got one around, it's like, you can do it right now. Just gonna go run over, grab one, put it in, call it good. So in this booklet, in your owner's manual, it'll give you all of these service intervals. Obviously, if something looks broken or if something looks, you're getting performance issues, it should be changed sooner than what the book says. The things that we're going to check the most on these are, we're going to be lubing and greasing all of the zerk points on these machines. Anywhere that pivots should have grease. And anywhere that doesn't get greased or gets skipped, there's a lot of points on here. I don't know how many are on this one, probably over 30 places. Yeah. There's a lot of grease. Yeah, it'll take you probably an hour to go through and lube a machine. They say every 10 hours. Every 10 hours, which is a lot, right? It's a lot. But you know, it's gonna help it last longer. And the other thing is, especially here in Hawaii, these little they call them zerks, the little nipple that you push the grease gun onto. If you don't use them, they'll corrode and the ball in there will stick. And then you got to replace them. I mean, they're cheap, but it's like, now I got to replace this thing because I didn't do the service interval. If you keep grease moving through them and don't allow it to dry out, then you won't get moisture on there, and the ball will stay lubricated in there. So these are zerks, right? And these ones are nice because they're all covered. Sometimes you'll see them just sticking out of random places.
Yeah, like I mean, with these, you know, you put it in, it's like obvious, like it starts to push out, and you're like, okay, it's fresh. But there's some down here. I think these you can see, you know, it'll start to push out. But there's one right over here on the other side. And you can just go and go. You can just like put grease and put grease and put grease, and there's like, I have no idea where it's going.
Right.
And did I just
over
way too much,
Yep.
or I didn't put enough yet, or...
Okay. So it's always a good idea to take a look at what am I greasing when I'm putting the grease in, right? So like if we're here, basically what you're greasing is, if you're greasing something, something's moving. And so you're trying to reduce the friction there. So here we're greasing this pin. So if we take a second and think about it, okay, I got a pin in here, and you know, how much can this bucket lift up? There's going to be a lot of pressure on this, and it's going to be moving back and forth like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for areas that show me that grease is around that pin. So I'm going to look where the pin goes through the outside, where the pin comes in this side, and basically that grease is going to take the path of least resistance. So it's going to go, and it may only come out, you know, a random place. It might be like right here. But if I've been pumping on it for a little while, and you know, you can feel it, sometimes these will actually move if they're not under tension, because as that grease comes in there, you know, it's got quite a bit of surface area. All I want to see is the old grease move. I don't need to keep pumping it until I got all new grease, because now I have a mess, right? So I want to see the old grease move, and just a little bit, because I'm doing this every 10 hours. I don't need to get crazy with it. All I'm doing is keeping everything moving. Any dirt that's got caught in that old grease, it's now going to be moved to the outside. I can wipe it off. So these are pins, so you're going to be looking, you know, in the slices, in the ends of the pins for movement. You can also hear it a lot of the time. You'll hear it kind of bubble. It'll go. And but you want to have a visual reference. Like I wouldn't just go off the ear. The ear is like, yeah, it's moving, and my grease gun isn't out of grease, right? Because that's the other thing is, you know, the grease guns, they have this guy on them, and this little lever stops the spring from putting pressure on the grease, right? So I've had a couple grease guns that this thing will get stuck. So you're pumping along, and you're like, man, nothing's happening. And then you pull it off and you try to just pump it, and nothing comes out. So you've been doing nothing. And what's happening is there's no pressure to push any grease up before you can even pump it. So you have to make sure that this little clip here is down, and that allows all the pressure to go up inside. Yeah, but to get back to your question, Jay, tie rod ends, so anywhere that's moving is going to have grease. Tie rod ends, a lot of time will have rubber on them. Like you see that guy's got rubber, and he's got Zerk. That one does not have a Zerk. So that one's already lubed inside there. Some of them will have rubber, and basically if I were to be greasing this, I don't want to burst that rubber. So as long as I can see a little bit of movement inside that little piece of rubber, yeah, I know the grease is getting in there and we're good. But yeah, getting up to the front, you know, if you got 10 pumps on it, you know you're pumping grease into it, and the Zerk is good, and it's not coming out anywhere, you call it good for now, you know. I mean, it's not, you want to get a visual cue, but some places they like can't do it, you know, obviously. So yeah, obvious grease points all the way down along the bucket. Your steering system, okay, you'll have some for the actual hydraulic ram that moves your steering. You'll have any hydraulic ram, which you can identify by lines coming in to two sides of it, one side and the other. It'll have grease on both ends. And so you need to grease both sides. Your tire turns, there's lube points for that. If we come into the back, yeah, so this thing, and then this thing should have one, but it doesn't. So grease helps things move and slide easier, but it's also really messy, you know. So this guy has a Zerk on it to keep everything moving and sliding easily. If it doesn't have a Zerk on it, what I would do is I would just take these off and I would just put some grease on there, you know. If it ever feels stiff, I know, okay, I need to lube this a lot more. I like to put a little bit of lube on these ball joints. These guys allow things to move like this. I don't know if you guys have been driving and hear that. After about 3 hours of sitting on the tractor that all day, it's like, okay. I can deal with the diesel engine noise, but the squeak, no thanks. The other place that you'll have to lube is, we got a moving component here, and so that is the PTO, and there is a Zerk in this guy somewhere. There's a Zerk inside this guy, because this shaft, can you take that for me? This shaft is lubricated. Okay, so you see how this shaft has to be able to go back and forth so that A, you can get it off, and B, you can put it on a different machine if you wanted. Inside here is always greased, and it makes it great when you forget to take this off, and then you drive away, and now you've stuck your greased end into the dirt, and you're like, oh man, now I gotta wipe off all this grease so that I can put new grease on. That's a little FYI. This cover here, it tries to keep the dirt off while we do it, and they give you these access holes to get to the Zerk for that, which it feels like your Zerk is actually broken off in here. Yeah. So it looks like that's where the Zerk used to be. And so this may have gotten caught up at some point. It looks like it did at one point get caught up. Maybe someone you know, could have caught a piece of California grass, could have, you know, caught tiller threw something up. But that would be good to replace that one.
And that you just screw in, or it like punches in there?
Just screw in, yep. Most of the time they're like 10 millimeter. You'll screw in. For now, I mean, like, if that thing is broken off in there, the other thing that you can do is you can pull this off, put a bunch of grease in here, and slide it back on. Yeah, there you go. Yep. Yep. How's that? Yeah, that's perfect. Give it a little slide. Yep. The thing about keeping your tractor maintenance is that it saves you headaches for those times when it's time to go. And, you know, if you abuse it, then all of a sudden it's like, I got a customer waiting, I need to like move a whole bucket load of this into the back of their truck, and something breaks. And you're like, oh, can you help me? Like, you know, like keeps things professional, and it keeps it like when you really, you know, if your operation depends on a tractor, those times that it really depends on it, you know that it's going to be okay, and you have that peace of mind that, yeah, we've been servicing it, everything's good to go. With the tiller, most of the time will have a lube point on it also, which is right here.
Yeah, that's another one that you don't really see, like where it's...
Yeah, so that one, you can actually, you'll be able to see. So when you lube this guy, what's going on here is you have power transmission is coming in from your PTO here. It's changing directions, running down a shaft, going into a belt that's drenched in oil, and then comes back down into your tiller blade. So what's going on here is this is a bearing that's essentially holding the other side of this. So when you lube here, what you're going to be looking for is you're going to be looking for grease coming out of like this slit right down here. This is one that needs to be done if you're tilling a lot, right? If this implement's just sitting around, it's not that big of a deal.